The PSVR 2 is official in every single way. Sony has revealed the design a few months ago, and more recently, they've also revealed all the games and the launch price. I myself am very excited for the PSVR 2 to try it and to use it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, but I also think that Sony did a couple of very questionable things with the PSVR 2. 3 things, to be more specific. So, in terms of the price, in terms of the games, and in terms of the chip, and this is what we're going to look at in this video. Starting off with the price. The PSVR 2 is expensive, like very expensive. It costs $550 or £530. Now, in comparison, the PSVR 1 used to cost $400 or £350. So the PSVR 2 is $150 more or £180 more here in the UK. That is a massive price increase. Not only that, but the PSVR 2 is now even more expensive than a PS5, which costs $400 or £360. But I think that what's even worse is that if you really want to get the PSVR 2 and you don't have a PS5, well, you also need to get a PS5. And the thing is, the PS5 is still almost impossible to buy. At least when it comes to official sources, you can still get it from scalpers for $600 to $700 right now. But of course, if you also buy the PSVR 2 for $550, you will end up paying around $1,200 for this combo. Of course, that is cheaper than a high-end gaming PC plus a VR headset, but it is still very, very expensive. For example, the Meta Quest 2, the most popular VR headset on the market right now, costs $350, and you don't need anything else for this to work. You don't need a console, you don't need a PC, it simply just works. The PSVR 2's price is definitely quite tough to swallow for most consumers who want Sony's VR option. And the thing is that I'm not really sure how much money Sony's actually aiming to make from the PSVR 2, as the PSVR market and the VR market in general is still quite small. The PSVR 1, for example, sold 5 million units by January 2020, whereas the PS4 sold 110 million. So essentially, only 4.5% of the entire PS4 user base bought a PSVR. And I honestly think that with a PSVR 2, that number will be even lower, as we have higher price points, and not a lot of people have PS5s, which are still quite difficult to get. Now, the second questionable thing that Sony did with the PSVR 2 is when it comes to the games. So I myself was really excited to play some of my favorite games from the PSVR 1 to the PSVR 2 with improved graphics and improved resolution. Games such as Astrobot Rescue Mission, or Beat Saber, or Batman, or Hitman 3 VR. These were some of my favorites. But for some reason, Sony decided not to make PSVR 1 games compatible with the PSVR 2. Wait, what? Yes, that means no Astrobot Rescue Mission, no Beat Saber, no Batman, no Hitman 3 VR on the PSVR 2. And in a way, it kinda makes sense, as the tracking system between the two PSVRs is vastly different. The PSVR 1 simply used a camera, which you had mounted on your TV, and then just lights, whereas the PSVR 2 uses a much more advanced system with cameras on the headset itself, and then infrared sensors to track the movement of the controllers. However, I'm pretty sure that if Sony really wanted to, they could have easily converted the PSVR 1 API calls to PSVR 2. And even remapped some of the buttons. I think all of that should have been easily doable if Sony really wanted to do that. I think what's even weirder is that the PSVR 1 actually works on the PS5. So you can use it, it's just that you need to get an adapter, which you can get for free after requested from Sony, and it takes around a month for it to be delivered. So if PSVR 1 games already run on the PS5, why not make them run on the PSVR 2? With the PS5 connected. So in that case, what sort of games will you be able to play on the PSVR 2? Well, PSVR 2 games only. We already have a couple that have been announced and they look great, such as Horizon Call of the Mountain. This is the flagship game with haptics on the headset itself, so that looks awesome and probably the best way to experience the PSVR 2. Then we have Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4, City Skylines. This one is a really fun one to play in VR, by the way. Then we have Pistol Whip, No Man's Sky, and then 40 or so more games, which are essentially Quest 2 ports. So, I mean, it's an okay selection at launch, but it's just that in terms of the big PSVR 2 games, we only have Horizon Call of the Mountain right now. Fun fact, No Man's Sky already had a PSVR 1 version. So it looks like developers, more of them, need to release PSVR 2 versions of their already existing PSVR 1 games. Or alternatively, to include a PSVR 2 game mode in their normal PS5 game. That's how Resident Evil does it. But the thing is, it would be awesome for more games to also do that. For example, God of War, it could simply have a VR mode, and Horizon Call of the Mountain, that could have easily been included with the main Horizon Forbidden West game. I just feel like that's a way better way for Sony to sell this PSVR 2 by simply telling users, hey, there's this secret mode in this game that you can unlock if you buy the PSVR 2, instead of forcing users to get that and then also get the separate PSVR 2 version of that game, if you get what I mean. And then the third questionable thing that Sony did is in terms of the chip. So unlike the Quest, which processes everything internally, the PSVR of course needs the PS5, which is the brains of the console. Now, the upside is that it has much more processing power than something like the Quest, but the downside is that you need that cable and you also need a PS5. Now, I do get why they've done this. The games are much larger and the displays are also higher in resolution, 2000 by 1040 compared to 1832 by 1920, and then they're also up to 120 Hertz. And on top of that, there's also loads of other features that the headset will have. The PS5 needs to process a lot of data. So you would expect that all this extra processing with the positional awareness would take away from a lot of the processing power required to run the games by the PS5. Well, not quite. And that's because MediaTek has recently announced that their very first VR chip will be used in the PSVR 2. And this chip is what will power all the non-gaming related features of the PSVR 2. So all the tracking, the controllers and everything else, so that the PS5 gets to use all of its performance to just run the game. Now, I do find it weird how they went with MediaTek instead of Qualcomm. As some of you might know, Qualcomm already has the XR2 chip, which is what the Quest 2 already uses. And this is a great chip, very powerful considering. And if they had used that chip, they would have been able to power all of the headset's requirements, plus even run some lighter versions of the already existing games. And in that case, we would have had two modes for the PSVR 2. So a fully wireless mode, which would give us more flexibility, and then that wired mode, which would have given us improved graphics. But right now, we only have that wired mode, which I think is really the biggest downside of the PSVR 2, the fact that we have that wire, as you cannot simply take it with you like you can with the Quest 2. It also requires a PS5, which is expensive, and it just anchors you down when you're playing a game. Regardless, I'm definitely very excited to get my hands on it. I'm definitely pre-ordering one on the 15th when they open. So let me know your thoughts on the PSVR 2, and the launch will be in February. That's when we'll all get to try it. So let me know in the comments what do you guys think. I'm Daniel, this is ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.